Hello, Happy New Year and welcome to a special edition of the programme. I'm Nima Abuarte. For many countries in this region, the focus for 2013 is how to improve their economies and create more jobs for their people. This week we're taking a look back at how we explored these themes. Here's what's coming up. Work worries. What are the hopes and fears of Egypt's youth? Pay gulf. Can oil-rich countries keep raising wages? Tempting tourists. What's being done to lure back visitors scared off from Tunisia? And talking points. We look at key issues shaping this region's future.
I think implementation of economic programs is going to be extremely weak, which is going to add to noise, economic uncertainty, is going to hurt investment and so on. So don't sign up to things that you don't think you're going to implement. That's one big lesson.
But first, youth unemployment was a common thread to the uprisings seen across this region, especially in Egypt, where it's estimated that 90% of those unemployed are under the age of 30. And it's a figure that has remained stubbornly high since the revolution, despite promises of change. In October, Katie Watson went to Cairo to find out more.
Meet Nabil. He's 21 and drives a tuk-tuk around his neighbourhood in Cairo. And when he's not picking up passengers, he spends his time and money making sure the tuk-tuk's looking as smart as possible. That way, he says, he attracts more custom. Work is picking up, but it's been a difficult period through revolution and protests.
There was no one in the streets and no one going to work. There was nothing. I used to work anyway, and with God's help, I used to make some money and come home at the end of the day.
We found this place. It's a good place for people to sit together and have opinions and share.
At the heart of Egypt's revolution, 5 minutes walk away from Tahrir Square, it's a different story. Ahmed is a young science graduate. He took part in all the protests last year. When the new government was elected, he gave them a chance, but he's still not found a job and so has carried on studying to give him something to do. Now, he says, enough is enough, and he's back on the streets protesting.
It's depressing. We thought of the revolution that people who believe in what we fought for are going to reach power and apply what we were fighting for. And then we find that the new government just keeps the same economic policies that Mubarak was following. So there's no change, and we feel that people who died and got injured and all these months that we fought for, they went in vain. There's nothing changed.
It's a chicken and egg situation here in Egypt. Political stability is needed to encourage economic growth and create jobs for young people here. But economic growth and the existence of jobs is needed to ensure political stability. Without one or the other, there's growing frustration among young people here.
Experts say that Egypt needs around 700,000 new jobs to be created each year, just to keep the unemployment rate stable. And for that to happen, the country needs to be growing at about 7% a year. But at the moment, it's nowhere near that. And that's cause for concern.
It's vital that young people have some hope. Now, we're not at the situation as we are in southern Europe, where there's about 50% unemployment among youth. But if the economy continues to grow at these sorts of levels, by the end of this time next year, we might be getting close to those levels. So it's vital that in the short to medium term, that the government and whoever is in power really try to encourage investment and give people hope and confidence that job creation will come about.
For Nabil, though, it's all about the short term. The money he's earning allows him to save for his wedding in a few months' time. Whether it's returning to the street to protest or earning money from tuk-tuks, people here keep moving, even if Egypt's economy is going nowhere for now.
Katie Watson reporting from Cairo in October there. Now, while countries like Egypt can't create enough jobs for their people, oil-rich nations can. And many of them keep their people happy with government jobs for those who want them, with good wages to boot. It's estimated that 85% of Kuwait's oil revenues are now spent on government salaries. But is this sustainable in the long run? Well, Howard Johnson went there in March to find out.
Kuwait's public sector pay dispute made headlines that would beggar belief in some of the world's more cash-strapped economies. Government to approve disappointing pay rise of 20 to 40%, said the Kuwait Times. The decision comes after months of real and threatened strikes by public sector unions, with the most serious resulting in flight cancellations by state carrier Kuwait Airlines. The problem stems from a perceived discrepancy between the pay deals of skilled and unskilled workers. But government pay rises are not just confined to the public sector. A supplement is also paid to private sector workers, aimed at reducing the number of aspiring civil servants. To make sense of it all, Middle East Business Report met public and private sector workers Ahmed Abdel Ghafour and Salah Al-Arbash. Ahmed is a financial analyst for a retail company. His working hours are 8 till 5 p.m. His total income is $57,000 a year, with nearly half of that made up of government supplements. And this month the government increased those payouts by $3,500 a year. His friend Salah works in PR for the Kuwaiti Ministry of Electricity and Water. His working hours are 8 till 2 p.m. For that he gets around $45,000 a year from the government. And with this month's increase, Salah now receives an extra $11,000 a year. Although Ahmed is happy with his government supplement, he believes the money could be better spent elsewhere.
We don't believe the government must pay this money for the private sector employees. The private sector, they must pay their employees' salary. What we believe that the government must spend this money in mega projects to create more jobs in the future for new generations.
For Salah, he's happy with his work-life balance, but he's not banking on a future of double-digit pay rises.
The working condition in the government sector is much more simple and, again, much more stable than the private sector. But it's kind of starting to feel, even for the average person and the regular person, it's kind of to feel like it's weird, like we get more raises every time. I don't know, the government's doing a great job making us happy with all the raises, but for how long, I'm not sure.
But do the government's pay rises have an inflationary effect? As one Kuwaiti put it to me, one month you may be celebrating your pay rise, the next you'll be commiserating the price hike in your daily cup of coffee.
For critics of the pay rises like economist Nasser Al-Nafisi, the government's spending is short-sighted and ineffectual.
Really, they are spoiling our wealth and playing with our money like children's. So this is not a strategy of a state. They are always thinking very short term to satisfy everybody.
So conflicting views on how best to spend the nation's wealth. But while Kuwaitis mull over their latest pay deal, the government will be well aware that if oil continues to average more than $100 a barrel, it plays into the hands of those workers who believe they deserve more.
Howard Johnson reporting from Kuwait back in March there. Now, if you haven't got oil, you need to look elsewhere for income. And Tunisia has been building its reputation as a tourist market. But the violence surrounding the country's revolution back in 2011 meant that visitor numbers slumped. Life there is more peaceful now, though. And so are tourists showing any signs of coming back? Well, Simon Atkinson paid a visit back in July and starts his report from the capital, Tunis.
For your business to survive in tough times, you have to keep chipping away.
At the start of the revolution, I lost 100% of the business. There were no tourists. Now it's picking up a little, but it's still slow. Trade's still only about 10%, maybe 15% of what it was.
Visitors are returning, and official estimates say numbers could reach pre-revolution levels by next year.
This is a welcome sight for Tunisia. Visitors on the streets of one of its most popular tourist attractions, the town of Sidi Bou Said. It's places like this which have really suffered in the last 18 months, but those working in the sector say that even though those numbers are slowly coming back, there's still a long way to go.
Travel agency owner Samir stayed in business by sacking half his staff, slashing the pay of the remaining workers, and, for the first time, targeting domestic tourists. And he says many foreigners will only return when they've full confidence in the country.
Tunisia's 95% safe. It's safer than many European cities, but it's all in the head. Today, if you ask me, an Arab, a Tunisian, a Muslim, do you want to go to Egypt? I'd say I'm not going. And that's simply because it's in the mind that it's not 100% safe. It's the same problem I face trying to tell clients come to Tunisia, that it's safe here.
There are plenty of reminders here about the country's recent history. So how are those who've already made the trip feeling?
Been walking all around the city, people are very nice and friendly, but you do need to speak a bit of French.
We were worried about it, but when we came here we discovered that it's a safe area to come and there's a lot of beautiful places to visit.
I think everything's like really calm and the people are great and there's nothing to be worried about.
To try and get more of these visitors, the Tunisian government's doubling its marketing budget to about $40 million, pushing its beaches, desert and heritage. And in their sights is another nation that's had its own revolution.
The best improvement that you can have in a very, very short time is from Libya. If the political situations is stabilized there, we can have a huge growth coming from this country. They have resources, they have money, and we can improve our touristical situation.
But with many traders still worried about their survival, anything that tempts people to take holidays in Tunisia is seen as good news.
Simon Atkinson reporting from Tunisia back in July there. Right, we're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, facing the future. What will 2013 hold for this region? Join us for a special debate. Welcome back to the programme. I'm Nima Abouwardi. Now, last year was momentous for the Middle East and 2013 is key to shaping this region's future. Joining me to discuss this is Farouk Sousa, Chief Economist for the Middle East at Citi, Habib Haddad, CEO of WAMDA, and Samer Bouhsali from Booz & Co. What are the key issues this year?
One is politics, the other is oil. In politics, you have the sort of the regional kind of aspects, which I think are going to be Syria and the spillover it might have into Lebanon and other neighboring countries. You have Iran, which has been an issue for years, but we shouldn't forget or get complacent about Iran. That is still going to be an issue going ahead. And the third one, which I think gets less coverage in the press, is Iraq. And there I'm thinking about the Baghdad-Erbil tensions that are threatening civil war. Now, in terms of domestic politics, clearly Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain and Kuwait are going to remain extremely tense and will have not only domestic implications for the economies, but also regional implications, potentially. Now, the second theme, I think, is going to be oil. And there it's a real question of haves and have-nots. Those oil exporting countries of the region are going to continue doing fantastically well. Oil prices are going to remain high, and that'll drive economic growth and government spending. But of course, the flip side is that those countries that are oil importers, and there I'm thinking particularly Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, are going to continue suffering. In particular, Jordan and Lebanon, they're finding their oil bills expanding hugely, and that's going to really be a drag on growth going forward.
And so what are the governments of the region concerned about?
Well, if you look at governments in the region, we have to separate them maybe into two camps. You have the North African and Levant governments, which are worried about one set of challenges, right, in terms of stability, safety and security. And you have to look at the GCC government, which have a different set of tools that they can work with, mainly around the oil wealth. For the GCC countries, I think their main mandate now is to stay the course.
They've been handing out a lot of money to their citizens.
Yes.
Is that enough? Is that going to keep the peace long enough for them?
Obviously, it's not enough. It helps them, manage requirements from the population. The real solution is in pushing, job creation where it counts, and fixing unemployment, and pushing education reform as well.
Nima, if I could just jump in 1 second. You seem to be making the implication that, you know, they're throwing money at the people to try and appease the people, and that is a strategy they're adopting. Now, there is some truth in that, clearly, particularly in Saudi Arabia.
While they go ahead and do all the other stuff, like diversifying their economies and so on.
Yeah,
yes.
there is an element of that, but I think that we also need to remember that there are certain issues in the region where you simply can't throw money at them. Kuwait, for one, Bahrain for another. These aren't issues that are going to be resolved through any government handouts or through any job creation programs or anything like that. These are deep political issues, and those countries are much more Arab Springy type countries. They're not simply social unrest from unemployment issues. So I think no matter what you do on the employment front in these countries, we will have to have a political resolution to those issues as well.
And so
I must add, actually, handouts are not just enough, or they are bad, they're negative. Giving handouts for the public in the public sector actually reduces productivity, it kills the private sector, and it kills entrepreneurship spirit. So giving handouts for people in the government is actually bad. It is the largest employer today, but it's actually one of the problems is why we have youth unemployment. And I was in Tunisia just a few days ago, and I was talking to some of the youth, and they said something that was quite interesting. They said a lot of Tunisians are looking for jobs, but not many are searching for jobs, because they get chômage, they get 300 dinars per month if they're unemployed. So I think there are short-term solutions and long-term solutions. And the governments of transitions, short-term solutions could be investment in infrastructure. If 1% of GDP is invested in infrastructure in Tunisia, it's expected to create something like 20,000 jobs. And in Egypt, around 60,000 jobs. So we need some short-term solutions to just quickly solve unemployment. But we need also long-term solutions. And I really doubt that handouts or subsidies can even get close to that.
One of the things that I think are most disingenuous about government policies post-revolutions in places like Egypt is, we've had a revolution which is all about social justice, freedom and bread, right? Great, and it's about getting people into jobs, it's about giving people greater opportunities and giving them a better standard of living. And at the same time, the government turns around and signs with the IMF, which is all about austerity. Now that's hugely disingenuous to me. It's quite clear that one of two things is going to happen. Either the government is going to fail in implementing its IMF programs and will not hit the targets, and we saw that in Egypt in December with Morsi's government putting in tax hikes and then rescinding that decree within a day. I think implementation of economic programs is going to be extremely weak, which is going to add to noise. Economic uncertainty is going to hurt investment and so on. So don't sign up to things that you don't think you're going to implement. That's one big lesson. Otherwise, they will implement them. You're going to have butane gas going more expensive. In Jordan, you'll have the energy hikes and so on and so forth. In which case, be prepared for more youth unrest. So it's a trade-off for the governments. Either we're going to have a continued political unrest, or we're just going to bite the bullet and say, we need help to appease the situation, and no, we're not going to sign up to your austerity programs. Please bear with us while we do this.
Are we going to see a country like Egypt, for example, or Libya, saying, actually, we're going to sort ourselves out and we're going to cut ourselves off for a while from the rest of the world and the likes of the IMF or whoever?
Libya and Egypt are very different, very, very different. The Libyan story today is about maintaining, national union. It's about making sure that streets are safe. Egypt has a different story about the color of the leadership versus what people expect, and they have different challenges. I think 2013 would be very interesting for both Egypt and Libya, of all places.
Yeah, but I mean, when it comes down to resources and whether or not you can finance this transition, Libya has the resources to finance the transition. Egypt, Jordan simply cannot afford to finance their transitions. We have to bear in mind that if a country like Egypt or a country like Jordan is to transition in any sort of smooth fashion, it does necessarily need to engage the outside world. It does. The oil-rich Arab countries, in the interest of regional stability, need to step up to the plate even more than they have so far.
I can't speak on their behalf, but I think part of what you said is being done today in terms of the oil-rich GCC, specifically the UAE and Saudi, reaching out to Jordan, Egypt, and even Morocco.
Sure.
For different types of support. I think that's important to continue and maybe to even
But if you look at the amounts that are being spent, right? If you look at the Saudis just putting 250 JD into the Jordanian central bank, of course it's better than a kick in the teeth. Of course it's something to it's great, right? That they've done that, and it's very generous of them to do that. But that's not going to make a difference to Jordan's economic trajectory. We need a cooperation on budgetary matters between these countries, not depositing with the central bank or investing in projects in the country. You need direct budget support in order to give the government the space to transform its budget, which means transforming its subsidy program, transforming its revenue programs in the way it approaches, but it needs that space to do that.
So the business community, what should business leaders be looking to do to mitigate risk, to perhaps capitalize on opportunities? Of course, all this that we're talking about means that there are opportunities as well to be had. Habib?
The business sector, specifically the private sector, was at fault for the past few years in being protectionist and also being greedy. We need to see more cooperation, private sector to government, private sector to SMEs and to NGOs. So there is a lot of money. It's not that there isn't no cash, and there is lots of transfer happening from the Gulf to states like Jordan. But the problem is that money is not actually being trickled down. I mean, we are into this space and we don't see that money. It really gets blocked. So this is one of the things that I see as a big problem to unlocking the potential of the Middle East.
And so, Farouk, what about the opportunities?
There are pockets of opportunity in the region that are very exciting. The region as a whole has a massive youth population, so we're talking about the downside, which is unemployment and youth activism. The upside is that's a massive market. That's a growing market. These guys are going to be consuming more and more going forward. And so there are definitely companies that are going into Egypt on the consumer side that are very excited about the future. Look at the building boom that's been going on in Egypt over the past 2 years. It totally defies logic. But this has been, some of these developers in Egypt are having a fantastic year because people are looking at the banking sector and saying, we don't want to put our money there. We don't want to put our money in the equity markets. Let's put it in bricks and mortar. So there's a retrenchment there, and there's always going to be a shifting, if you like, of economic interest, and it's a question of identifying where that shift is going on. Look at Iraq. Iraq is getting richer by the day. Their oil production is going up. Revenues are coming in, and they're spending $50 billion a year simply rebuilding their tattered infrastructure. It's a country as rich as Kuwait with the infrastructure of a country like Djibouti. So that catch-up is going to be immense, and that's a key theme that we're looking at. Lebanon, as basket cases as Lebanon is from a political perspective and now from an economic perspective, there's gas that they're going to start looking to develop next year, and I think that's going to create new opportunities there. Of course, massive uncertainty. So I think, not everything is negative. Not everything we should say, oh my gosh, it's all going down the pan.
As a very last thought, I want to ask each of you in turn, 2013 is the year of what? You can choose a country or an area within the region or the region as a whole. Samer, 2013.
In my book, it's about staying the course.
For the Gulf.
Shifting gears for the Gulf. And for North Africa, it's about getting stability back.
Habib?
I'm biased. So I think 2017 is the year of the Arab entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurship is an equal opportunity employer. We need to know that. It's a change of mindset. We need to also know that comfort zones are not comfortable in the long run. This is why entrepreneurship should be key, not just for employment, but also for a mindset, as a mindset perspective.
Farouk?
I think 2013 is going to be a year like many other Arab years, where the economic potential of the region is really weighed down and let down by the complete political dysfunction of the region.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. That's all from us for this week. I do hope you've enjoyed our programme. Happy New Year. Goodbye.